what am I here today to talk to you about? First things first, how was lunch? Survived? Yes, had a good time? Excellent. I like that. After lunch, normally people are like, oh, yeah, whatever. But you have the energy. I like that. That's fantastic. Cool. So today, I like to talk about something really important, and that's kittens. Right? So I think the internet has not enough cats, and I know that that's like a very debatable opinion, but I believe that we need more cats, and actually also more dogs. I'm not like racist or anything, so like dogs are just fine to me as well. But I thought I might like build something revolutionary to like disrupt the internet, and I'll build like a really cool website that I call Kitten Club, and it has obviously like it's like it's the best kittens I can find on the internet, and I put them all together in one site, and you can upload your own kitten, have it rated, and if it passes the quality threshold, then it might be displayed here along the other amazing kittens that I've got. And the cool thing is, these days, that's pretty easy to do, right? I mean, we have React has hooks, I just like build this page, and boom, we have it all done. Thank you very much for coming to my TED Talk. Except, there is this question that keeps popping up, especially if you're working for like a startup or a larger company that produces a new website, or you're helping someone make their way into the web. It's like, do I need SEO? And the answer is clearly, of course not. I mean, SEO is easy. You just like make a website and then it'll be found. Oh, all right, okay. That's not good. Okay, I might want to know a little more about what SEO is to get into the internet and be found by search. Because actually, how do people find websites? If you're not one of the larger websites already and a very well-known brand, people will probably not find your website. Especially if you're starting out on the web as a smaller company, or you have a new project, or you have a new product, you want to have people find it. And you want the people who need it to find it. And search engines are a fantastic channel to make that happen. If you're looking for something, if you look for, I don't know, a car rental or a place to eat, you probably go to the search engine of your choice. So you want to be in the search engine. You want to be found through the search engine. So how can you facilitate that? Well, first things first, I would like to talk about what SEO is. Because who here has worked with SEOs in the past as developers? Keep your hand up if you enjoyed the experience. Oh, like one person, amazing. Keep that, like I'll give you some Swiss chocolate that you can bring to your SEO because you want to keep that person. No, so the thing is, SEO is not necessarily well understood, and sometimes it's, people are joking about developers. They're like, what's an algorithm? It's what a developer would say if he can't be bothered, or they can't be bothered to explain what the code does to you, right? And SEOs are sometimes similar. They're not necessarily the best people to explain what they're doing, and that's not because they don't want to, or they're terrible people. It's just because it's a lot of stuff that goes into SEO. And everyone has a slightly different definition, and everyone does it slightly differently based on what their clients or companies that we work for need. And that's perfectly okay. We also develop software differently. So like confession, I'm not doing that much React. I'm actually more of an either like vanilla, lit, or Vue guy, but I have done some React, and I have done some Angular, and I have done it quite extensively over a long time, so I know what it does, and it's a tool under my tool belt, and SEO can be similar. But who here thinks that SEO is basically sacrificing a chicken and like running around the computer 3 times and then hoping that the moon and the stars align? Hands up? Yeah, that's more people than they enjoy working with an SEO. So what is this SEO? Well, SEO stands for search engine optimization, and is actually, in my opinion, most of the times it's 3 things. You start with the content. SEO should figure out together with sales and marketing, what is it that we are having, and who is it that's using it or needing it, and what are these people looking for? What's the problem our stuff is solving, and how do we describe what we've got to these people? That's not really technical. So what else is there? Well, there's also the strategy side. How do we do this? What do we want people to do once they're here? What do we want people to, or what do we want to support people with? What are the questions they are having? What are the things that we can suggest to them? How can we guide them through what is probably a very complicated process? If you've ever booked a train ticket in Germany, you know complicated processes can take many, many steps to successfully complete. Again, that's not really something that we can help, but that's what a good SEO, these 2 things are things that good SEOs do for you. But where we can help is the technical part. Because SEO is also technical, because it is a technical process and it deals directly with our code. And crawlers behave differently than users, and crawlers behave differently than regular browsers sometimes. So a good technical SEO can help you make the right implementation decisions, and they can help you make decisions while you're designing your system rather than fixing the problems once they have happened. But they can also test the system for you, and they can also make you more at ease with what you're building by saying like, yes, we're doing fine, don't worry about it, we'll be found, everything is good. And if something goes wrong, they probably also know how to fix it. At least they won't fix it themselves, but they can tell you where to find the information you need for your specific tech stack to fix that problem. So this is where we want to focus today, because that's where I feel most at home, and I think all of you as well probably, right? Cool. Good. So the first question that I keep getting is like, oh, so does that mean like React, you showed us that your site was not in search. Does that mean like React kills SEO? You can have never a successful website in Google search if you're using React? And I say, no, that's not true. But the thing is, it's a technical process on both sides. We are building a technical system, and there's a technical system that interacts with our content online. And we have to make sure that these two play along together quite well. And I think the first step to understand what's happening and where things can go wrong is to understand how does your page get into Google. So how does this work? I mean, the other search engines do similar things, but I can't really know that much about them because normally other search engines don't really talk about that to us or to the public. So I can only deduct from what we're doing what the others are probably doing. So what I'm telling you is definitely valid for Google search, but is definitely also some extent of valid for other search engines. Cool. So we'll start with a list of URLs. We either found them somewhere, or someone submitted them to us, or we just, we know a bunch of web pages, so we take these URLs and put them in a list. And now we take things from this list, and we don't do that manually. We don't pay people to do that for us. We have Googlebot for that. And the very first thing Googlebot does is it crawls, which means it makes an HTTP GET request to the URL that it got from the queue. And it doesn't it's not just one computer doing that, it's many computers doing that at the same time, obviously. But they are making GET requests, and they get some HTML or something back, depending on where the GET request goes to, right? So now we have some content, and now we need to understand what is this about. If it's HTML, we probably have some semantic information, like this is a headline, this is a link, this is an image. So we can figure out what is this page about from the text, from the image, and from the semantics of the page, and from the videos and all that stuff. Cool, and also we'll find links here. So once we found the links, we can put them back in the queue, and then we can basically do the next thing, and we put this information like this page is about cats, this page is about dogs, this is about ice cream, this is about React. We put that in our index, right? Because if you go to a library, you go to someone who knows where books are, right? And that's pretty much like the index kind of thing. You're like, I need a book about cooking vegan. And then you go to the person or to the computer that lets you look up the index, and you go like vegan, and then it shows you all the books that are about vegan cooking. You do pretty much the same thing here. We have an index that we can then query at. The problem, though, is if we look at our website from earlier, what is this website about? So we made a GET request, and we got this. It's not necessarily clear what this web page is about, right? So yeah, I mean, the problem is that some crawlers actually don't even run JavaScript, so that's all they see and they're done. Again, thank you very much for coming to my tech talk. No, not quite, because Googlebot actually runs JavaScript and has been for a couple of years now. So we have a bit of experience in how to do that. That's fantastic, because that means that we can extend our crawling infrastructure, right? So we crawled, we processed, we indexed, but we also render. The problem is that's the web, as far as Googlebot knows. It's a lot of pages, isn't it? It's 130 trillion pages. Now, it turns out, I don't know if you ever studied computer science and had a professor like mine, the theoretical computer science people are like, imagine, so assuming that you have a computer with infinite memory, or with infinite amount of cores. Now, this doesn't really exist. Yeah, but we have the cloud, Martin. Yes, but it's still someone else's computers. So like there's still someone's actual hardware, and we don't have infinite amounts of hardware. I know, shocking, but that's the reality. And this number just keeps growing. This is just the largest approved number I could find. So yeah. So how do we do that? Well, again, a queue. So we figured out, okay, so we need to render this page, and then we put it in a queue, and the moment we have computing power available, we actually render it, which means we are using a headless browser, in this case Chromium, to actually run the JavaScript and get the HTML after the JavaScript has executed. And then again, we are processing the links that we found. All the URLs go back into this URL crawling queue. That's how this works. And then it goes into the index. And then something that I'm not going to talk about. SEOs love talking about it. I really don't, because it's not my cup of tea, and it's a completely different can of worms, because we have to, we have to do something after that, but doesn't matter. So this is the HTML that we are looking at Googlebot, in Googlebot. This is the rendered HTML. So this page clearly is about the kitten club, and it's the best kitties on the web. So this page now has content that we can put in the index. Once we have it in the index, we can render it, we can rank it, but we're not talking about ranking. Sorry, this here confused me. I'm surprised I put that in. Anyway, you're gonna hear some SEOs talking to you about that, you know, that's all nice and fine. Googlebot can run JavaScript, but Googlebot runs Chrome 41. What, 41? Yeah, that used to be true, but we have recently updated Googlebot. It's now an evergreen Chrome. And whenever we're going to update the stable release of Chrome, Googlebot will update within a couple of weeks. So you don't have to worry about the very old version of Chrome anymore. If you hear that, point them to this blog post. It explains that that's no longer true. That has been true for the last couple of years. We have fixed that. And now that we have it through the index, we have to rank it, which means once someone comes and asks us for the cutest kittens, then we have to look at what kind of kitten pages do we have and how good are they. And we're looking at lots of factors of what is a good kitten page in this particular case, if the query is kitten. So for every query, we are ranking pages differently. You don't just generally rank. Oh, my page ranks really well. Ranks really well for what? If you are selling vegan cakes, ranking for the query cutest kitten doesn't really help you. But again, ranking is a completely different can of worms. I'd rather not talk about it. So all we are talking about is what we can influence as developers. We're going to talk about crawling, rendering, and indexing. Ignore ranking. Ranking is not a problem if you have good quality content. If your content is good and you're doing things right, you'll be fine. All right? Cool. So there's a few things that you should do to make sure that Googlebot can process your website properly. One thing is you need to make sure that you're actually linking between your different pages. Because what we're doing is we're getting the HTML, we render the JavaScript, and then we get more HTML, and then we look for URLs and links. If you're not linking your pages, we're not going to find the different pages. Well, there's ways around it, but normally, generally speaking, you should just make sure that you have links between your different pages of your website. Let's say your homepage is a bunch of products that you're selling. If I click on that product, I should probably find links to other similar products, and then we can crawl going through your page through the links. Also, use actual links. We are not clicking on things. Oh, but it's a button. No, so good for you. We're not clicking on a button. Why would we click on a button? We're looking for links. The web has links. Use links. Right? Oh, but I can have an on-click handle on it. No. Links. Just links. It's fine. Trust me. And while we're on the topic, we're looking for URLs. Please do not use hash URLs. If you're using the hash hack that we used to, we had to do that in the days, but because that was our only way to change the content dynamically with a JavaScript event. Now we have History API, use that. React Router does it by default, you should be fine. But I've seen some React applications that are basically best described as legacy. Do not rely on these. If you have one, this is fine. It's not that we're saying you can't have any of these. But this does not describe different content. If you're using a hash to load different content, then you're hacking the URLs. That's not working with crawlers. Also, you should make sure that you understand which pages of your website are valuable. If you have really good description pages, if you have really good informational pages, those are the meat of your website. Because if I have a question and your website answers this question, that's great. If you have user-generated content, you might not know if this content is good. If you know that it's not good because a lot of fields that you gave as optional fields are not filled in, do not submit it to the index because, you know, that just takes up time for us to crawl, and we can crawl the more interesting, more meaty pages of your site maybe later or slower. So that's not really a good thing either. And optionally, you can create a sitemap and tell us, oh, these pages are really important to us, the others not so much. And then even if they are not linked very well, we'll find them through the sitemap. This is what a sitemap is. It's an XML file with all the URLs that you really truly care about. You can use some server-side code, you can use Puppeteer or something like that to create these. They're not a guarantee that we're gonna index it, it's just you're telling us that you care about these URLs, and if we pick it up, that might be one of the signals that we use to figure out which URLs to crawl, how often and when. Also, you don't want to be in this territory, right? So if I'm looking for a recipe for apple pie, where do I click here? Are these good search results? Not really, especially if the description is the same for all of them. So you see, like, we have a little bit of description text below the title. If they are all saying the same thing for all the different recipes on your website, that's not a good experience. Instead, give us specific titles and descriptions. If this says, Barbara's apple pie, this apple pie is really easy to make and quite fun to bake with kids, if that's what I'm trying to do, that's a fantastic information that I want while I'm scrolling through search results, right? It's not a ranking factor, let me be very clear. This is not a ranking factor, but it helps your users understand that this is a good search result for them. So you get more clicks that way. Oh, wow, okay. Never mind, the important bit is easily visible. You can use a plugin called React Helmet to do that in your React pages. You can use all the props, and in the render function, you basically specify the title. In this case, I'm using the name of the cat here. Oh, okay. Kittens.club. And then I have a description that tells me what this kind of kitten or cat is doing. Excellent. But what do I do when I have a situation like this? So I can watch or go specifically to Abby this way, but I want to be friendly to people who mistype, because especially phones sometimes do weird things with capitalization. So this should be the same page. But because I haven't started from a green field, I actually have a legacy application. I also support the IDs. And actually, there used to be a really, really old legacy application that had URLs like this. I redirect them all to the same content. But how do we pick? How do we know? You probably want to make sure that we are having a consistent URL and we are not using URLs that you want to see not on search results. Well, this is called a canonical. And again, within the React Helmet bit, you can just tell us link relation canonical and then give us the URL that you would like us to display for this specific thing and to use. So you can help us find duplicates. We are actually pretty good at filtering duplicates. So if you're in this situation and don't tell us anything, we will go at random. We'll be like, okay, so this is something that was linked to a lot, so we're probably going to go for this one. If this is something that is linked to a lot, we probably go for this one. But you actually want this one, then just tell us. We might not pick it. If we think that your canonicals are wrong or not helpful, we might ignore them. But generally speaking, give us a canonical. That helps us a lot. Also, if you want something not in the index, you can add a meta tag. You can add this meta tag robots here. Actually, we have 3 screens, so let me do this. We can use this meta tag robots here and say, do not index this page. In this case, we will crawl it, but then go like, okay, this doesn't want to be in the index. We're going to remove it. It's not going to show up in search results. If, however, you're okay with being linked to and somehow showing up into search results sometimes, but don't want us to crawl your page because your server is really brittle, then you can also add a robots.txt and tell us not to do that. So everything under /private will not be crawled by Googlebot. You can also use a user agent asterisk, and all bots will not crawl this URL. Be careful with that, though. So here you see like my kittens club, and you see like there's no images down here. None. It's all just blank. And it says like Kittens Club. But why is there no image loaded here? Well, the problem is, if I check what happens when I call the API, this is like some random API /cats, then it says Googlebot was blocked by robots.txt. So I have thought I save Googlebot the crawling of my API, but my API needs to be crawled to display any content. So don't do that. Be really careful with what you put in your robots.txt. We also have something that we call structured data and rich results. So if you've seen like something like this, here's a product that is pretty highly rated, and here's a bunch of recipes. If you have one of these things, if you have recipes, articles, movies, videos, books, something like that, events, all sorts of things, you can get these search results by adding what we call structured data. You give us that, and we'll be happy. We have a rich results test that you can use to find out if your page is eligible, and we have a page that describes all the verticals that we support. So everything is listed here with lots of documentation on what you need to add to your website. Also, let's talk about performance. So here's my competitor. They have dogs. All right. Was that a good experience? Well, I don't know. Like, if I look at it, the first moment that I'm delighted is here. So like the time to first doggo is really bad. But luckily there are things that you can do. You should invest in server-side rendering or hydration or pre-rendering, depending a little bit on your use case, because it makes things faster. For React Snap, for instance, React Snap uses a headless Chrome to crawl your website and create HTML pages out of it. It looks more or less like this if you want to use hydration as well. So you can say like, okay, we'll load the static HTML, but then we add the JavaScript action on top of it, and then you have pretty much a regular running React app in your browser. But you also send the HTML to crawlers that do not run JavaScript. So you win. You kill two birds with one stone that way. And server-side rendering does make a difference if you look at it here. Like we have the original client-side rendered page, first doggo here, and first doggo here if I server-side render, and that's the only difference. The rest of the code is the same. It's just server-side rendering versus client-side rendering, and each of these is like 1.5 seconds or something on a really slow mobile connection, so that makes a big difference. You can also use one of these. Gatsby and Next.js are pretty great and actually bring you a lot of this stuff for free, and you don't have to deal with this once you're gotten yourself into it. Gatsby even has SEO documentation, which I think is fantastic and something that I would like to see more of by other frameworks. If you want to do lazy loading, you totally can. If you use like React Lazy and Suspense, for instance, then you can load your components in a lazy manner. And it doesn't really speed up the first interaction, but it speeds up following up interactions, so that's pretty cool. And then that just works with search as well. Be careful to test this properly because there are race conditions where things can go wrong. This is more or less the code for this. So we are lazily loading this specific component, the cats list component, and then we use the suspense from React Core to say the fallback for this is the loader, which was this pulsating kitten. So you can use that to lazy load your components. There's also a workaround that we call that is that is called dynamic rendering. Dynamic rendering is a workaround because it doesn't give you the user benefits. Basically what happens, oh wow, can we do it a little darker again? So that the arrows show up? That'd be cool. If not, that's fine. Basically, a browser comes to your server, it asks like, hi, can I have the thing? And you just send wonderful, there we go. No, yes, yes, fantastic. And it gets back the initial HTML and JavaScript, the client-side rendered app. But if a crawler comes and they tell you in the user agent, your server will branch out and run a headless browser to actually pre-render it into static HTML. That way all the crawlers get the content in static HTML. The downside is it's a workaround because it's only for the crawlers. You don't get the user benefits of it. You don't have a faster website afterwards. You can use things like Rendertron, Puppeteer, or prerender.io. Those are tools and services that do this for you. And you configure them in your server. If you don't want to touch your client-side code, that's a way to do that. We also have a code lab if you want to try it out and take Rendertron for a spin. We explain it to you on the code lab. There's videos that explain all of this in like a series, and the series continues. So please stay up to date with this because there's more videos coming, and the first 8 videos are quite useful already. So what can go wrong? Well, I make a tiny mistake with my arms here, and then this happens. So you can fall sometimes. That can happen with technology as well. So what happens if I go to a URL that doesn't exist? That looks like an error page, right? Except when I check the HTTP code, it says this is not an error page, this is fine. And normally Googlebot is good at catching that, but it should make you nervous when that happens. Why should it make you nervous? Because you might end up with something like this, right? So like this is something you don't want to see. An error occurred in the search results because you haven't told us that this is a problem. This is not the content that you would like to see. This is how you fix that. So here we are actually, why is this asking for dogs? Doesn't matter. This is asking for a dog from the API, a cat in this case, really. If the cat doesn't exist, we can redirect. The server has answered 200, okay, we are done with the server side. But on the client side, we can say, go to a page that gives us a 404 and we'll be fine. We can also check if there's an error and then use the meta robots and set that to no index. And then once we have rendered it, the processor will go like, oh no, this doesn't want to be in the index. Can we do this? So we have like a meta robots that disables all indexing, and then we use JavaScript to return like, no, this page actually exists, this is fine. Who thinks this is fine? Smart people. Because I did that and it wasn't fine. Because what happens here is not what you think it does. I have to use my own reaction GIFs because I don't get copyright clearance for the others, so I use my own now. What happens here is that the processing stage sees, oh, look at that. Processing has finished, but we don't need to render, we don't need to index because it says no index. So the JavaScript never ran, our page is out of the index. Not very cool. There's more things like, for instance, if you rely on cookies. Let's say you have a home page that has a cookie prompt, and then on every other page you're checking if that cookie has been set, and you go back to that page if it hasn't been set, then Googlebot gets stuck here. Because Googlebot doesn't persist data. We don't set cookies. You can use cookies, local storage, session storage, IndexedDB, but we're not going to persist that data. We're going to throw that data away once the page has finished being indexed. So don't rely on these. Also, be careful with feature detection. Feature detection is a good thing, but sometimes it is not sufficient. Here we check if this browser has geolocation. If it has geolocation, we load local content for the location that the user is at. And if not, then we load global content. The downside is this is a problem, because what happens if I decline? So the browser then has geolocation, but I decline, so this callback never fires because I declined the permission request. Googlebot declines permission requests. So we don't have any content on this page. Except if we had a fallback handler here, load fallback for the error case. So now we're like, does this browser have geolocation? Yes, cool. In that case, can we actually like load the local content if it's successful, or can we load the fallback content if it's not successful? That works. Now in every case we have content. So this is good. If you want to learn more about these specifics, then you can easily go to the troubleshooter page. If you want to test your site, we have two fantastic tools to do so. One is the mobile-friendly test. It tells you if your page is mobile-friendly. Who would have known? The other thing is, it tells you how it looks like. So is this blank? Does this look like the page that I would expect to see here? It gives you the rendered HTML, so you can find out what the rendered HTML actually looks like. And it gives you JavaScript errors, including stack traces. So you can figure out if something goes wrong, why it has gone wrong here. The other thing is Search Console. It tells you how much of your pages are in the index, how much weren't, how much were excluded, and how much had errors on them. It also tells you why something isn't in the index. So this might be a soft error because we had a 404 on this page, and we might not have expected a 404 here. It also shows you analytics on how often you show up in search results. That's pretty nice. And you can test them live, so like you can enter any URL that is on your domain, and then it does some spinny, and then it tells you this is not on Google. And then you can see like why not? Well, it has been crawled, but it hasn't been indexed yet, so it's somewhere in the middle. Be warned, these tools haven't updated to the latest Chrome yet, but we are working on that. So stay tuned on our blog and on Twitter. We'll let you know when that happens. Thank you very much. I hope you had a great time.